Good morning. Thanks for joining our webinar, The Analytical Stack for Data-Driven Companies and particular for digital startups. A very warm welcome to you. We will have this webinar in English. If you have questions from your side, please use the Q&A feature to ask some questions. At any time during the webinar, you can ask the questions. I will interrupt the presenter, and also at the very end, we will just summarize what we have just got through the questions. The session will be recorded and made available afterwards, and also the slides. So I can give over to the speaker today, Boris Vorberg, and he will start the webinar.
Thank you, Jörg. Welcome from me as well. The presentation is, as we said, for data-driven companies and digital startups. We think that every initiative could be looked like a startup if you want to, so it's not startups only in the sense of a company startup, but also a project startup. Who is talking to you today? It's me, Boris. I have more than 20 years experience in the BI analytics area. I've been in several projects across industries and across departments as well. So pharmaceutical industry, energy industry, finance industry, and also marketing and development in other departments. I am, as a role, a managing partner at iRIX. iRIX itself is a full-service system integrator, which is planning, building, and running tailor-made software solutions for its customers since also more than 20 years. Okay, that's all about marketing, about myself and our company. The rest is about the BI stack, what is why you are in this meeting today. So what is the content of today? I'm gonna spoil a little bit and say which tools we're gonna present. We're gonna present Talent as an integration platform. We're gonna present Exasol as the database layer, and Power BI as visual analytics or reporting tool. We're going to present from the reporting perspective one more tool, which is Apache Superset. I'm going to detail why we present two out of them later. We named this presentation the Ideal BI Analytics Stack, and this is what we're going to present you. However, and this is what this little star means there, we have to admit that there is nothing like the ideal BI stack, like there's no ideal HiFi stack. It always depends. It depends. I mean, this is a traditional consulting answer, but it depends on what you want to do. If you think of the HiFi stack, it depends if you want to play tapes, if someone still knows tapes these days, or if you want to play compact discs. And in the BI or analytics area, it depends on the one hand, what you want to achieve. So what business value you want to achieve. And on the other hand, it depends on your circumstances. So classical questions here or dependencies here is, do you need something, for example, like pixel perfect reporting, you know, for example, to print invoices or something like that? What data volume do you have? Is that in the big data area? Is that just small amounts of area? Do you need visual analytics, or are you more in the data science area where you run maybe artificial intelligence routines over your data? What role does security play? Do you need row-level security? Is there any access restrictions that you need to apply? Do you have regional constraints, for example, that your data can't leave the European Union, for example, or Switzerland, or whatever country you are in? Is your application more data hub-like than used by business users? All these questions play a role when you evaluate what is the perfect or the ideal stack for you. However, we think that the stack that we present today should be considered in your evaluation, and the rest of the presentation is about why it should be considered, and I will iterate over the tools from bottom to top to show you what it is and why we think they should be considered, especially for data-driven companies, and yeah, what we think are the benefits of them. Okay, so if we say data-driven companies, digital startups, what is the standard situation, let's say, or what is the common what are the common challenges that they share when it is about data? So basically, if you look at from a top level at it, you could think it's simple. You have people looking at data, or you could also say people working with data. It's not always looking. But if you look into the details, or if you look into the companies, and I looked in many of them, situation is not like this. The situation is rather like this, which means that you have multiple groups of people or roles or types of users that work with your data. You have data scientists that have different interests than data engineers or business experts that work with your data, or even management that needs data. So you have various types of people, and not only people, you also have other applications that might consume your data. So it's not just one user group. And normally you don't only have one tool or one way of looking at your data, but there are many around, and in almost all of the companies that I work with, there's not just one BI tool and not just one way of accessing the data. So often you see analytic tools like Tableau or Power BI, what we're going to present today, but you also see tools out of the data scientist world, like a Python script or R scripts that work with your data, that need to consume it. And when we look at the data level, I mean, that is probably familiar to all of you. You don't just have one data storage or one silo of data where you have all the data that you're interested in. You potentially have many of them with many different technologies that might be really structured or even relational, like in SQL Server or Postgres, Oracle, that kind of stuff. It might be semi-structured or even unstructured, lying on some Hadoop file system or other environments, Amazon S3 or so, where your data resides. So what does this mean? What challenges do come out of that? One thing, and I think the main thing, is that you have, and that's clear when you look at the picture, you have complexity, and out of this you potentially have a high total cost of ownership, even if some of the tools might be relatively low cost. And that's probably the biggest challenge in terms of business goal that you want to achieve. Different people using different tools and different databases potentially report different data or different numbers out of the same data. So you don't have any single version of truth, which is not good. In addition, you might have performance issues, and it's clear if you look at the picture, you have an integration need. So you normally, I've never seen that differently. You normally have to integrate data from various sources to make it comparable and to make it available in a single view, at least. It does not need to be a single database, but in a single view to your consumers, be that business people, be that other applications. So how does the stack that we present tackle these problems? I start from an architectural slide, which is potentially familiar with you. So talent is placed in the integration layer here. It's a tooling that allows integrating various sources and to bring them together, to join them, to integrate them, to address data quality issues. We will have a look at that. And our proposal is to bring that data. If you really move it, you don't have to move everything. I come to that. If you move your data, to bring it into Exasol as the speed database, as the analytical layer that we use. You might already have some data warehouse, but you can incorporate that as well, either by loading or by pointing to it with virtual schemas. And on the top, you will have something like Power BI, but as I said earlier, you will potentially have other consumers as well, in addition to Power BI. So you might have, we currently in some projects where there are web portals that use integrated data in order to present data directly to the customers, so self-service portals. You might have other applications that need data from your system, and you might have data science tools that require data here as well. So as I said, potentially you have multiple consumers and also multiple BI tools. We think at iRIX that it is important to have a solid base for your data, and then you can and be rather flexible with the consumers. This is why we also show you Superset as an alternative reporting tool or visual analytics tool, I would rather say, in addition to Power BI. Regarding data science, one advantage of the proposed stack is that you can move the data science script, so the outcome of your data science work, into the database layer, which in the end makes, and this is what we think is important, which makes that you can have a consolidated business layer, including advanced analytics, including machine learning, which is available to all the consumers, and it is available via SQL. So this is a big advantage. So we would call this, and we would recommend to build the so-called business layer really on a database level in SQL, because all of the tools understand and can speak SQL. And so you make your asset of data, you make that available to almost all of the tools. Yeah, that's a big advantage in comparison to building a business layer in one of the reporting tools, like it's often proposed by them. Okay, so now we go through the tools from bottom to top. And I start with talent, and I have per tool 2 slides and a demo. I don't want to stick too much in the slides, rather use the time for the demo. And the first slide is always marketing slides, so to say, from the vendors. And the second slide is what we think makes them really well suited for data-driven companies. So talent data fabric, what is it? It is a suite of services. You will see some of them in the demo, which addresses your integration and integrity in terms of data quality challenges. It can be run like all the tools. I can spoil that as well. Like all the tools, it can run on premise or in the cloud, or a hybrid mixture of that. So why do we think that this is a good choice? I mean, when you look at the process that needs to be done, you see that for data governance, you see that there are many people involved, and we will have a look at these 2 tools out of the suite, data preparation and data stewardship, because this enables people, enables the business to be part of the data preparation work. So it's moving self-service BI, which has been which is around for a long time, but which always addressed reporting, and self-service was always thought I can do my own reports, but here it moves self-service to data preparation and to data enhancement, and I think that's really a big value add here, which also is important for data-driven projects or companies, because it speeds up the whole process, because you can involve the people that know the data. In addition, it has DevOps support, which so development and continuous integration, continuous delivery, which speeds up the cycle as well, and it scales easily. We will see why in a short demo. I will start with the tool data preparation in Talent. So this is the cloud environment of Data Talent, but would look the same on premise. And what I first see here is the available data sets that I have in this demo here. And what is interesting to see is that you have a trust score for your data sources. So this is computed out of several criteria. One is the quality of the data, and others are really user-driven. So you can certify your data sources if you have the appropriate roles in the tool, and you can rate the data sources. So out of this, you have a trust score per data source, which is the start of a data catalog or a data inventory, which is really an important thing for combining, let's say, combining the speed that you need, or bridging the gap between the speed requirements that you have in your organization and the quality aspect of it, so the integrity aspect of it. I will show you quickly how such a data set looks like and how you can prepare this as a business user. I have to log on because I was too long inactive. So I go to the data set as before, and this is a real simple data set, but it doesn't matter in order to show you the power of the tooling. So here we look at the definitions of a data set, and here, for example, you see that this column has been indicated as being a country, but you could change that and say this is of a different type. I just type some ambiguous letter, arbitrary letter, to see that this is not only, you can not only select types as you might know them from databases, like this is an integer or a date or a varchar, but you can also have semantic types, meaning it's business types, like you can have an industry or a language or postal codes and stuff like that. And we will see when we start the data preparation, which I do right now. I'm going to add a new preparation. You can have several per data set. Then you will see that the semantic type plays a role. What I'm going to do right now is that I investigate my data, and I see directly in this quality bars here that I have some problems. This is indicated by the colors here in the quality bar. I have some problems which I can directly, by clicking on it, filter on just the problem rows, so that I can have a clearer view on what the problems are and then address them. And here I'm just doing a simple change and say I change UK to United Kingdom. And here you see that the proposals from the system are based on the semantic type. So as I said, this column is a country. It proposes me country names and not anything else. Yeah. So I can now choose that I want to replace UK by United Kingdom. And here I say I want to do that for all of the rows, not just for this one that I worked on. And here you see the first step of talent names a recipe. So this is, if I continue, you will see a second step afterwards. When I say I changed United States in addition, then I have two steps, which is a recorded, if you want to, it's a little bit like macro recording in Excel. It's a recorded recipe. I like the name. What steps you do with your data, and this when you're done with your recipe, you can save it. I mean, it's saved automatically, but you could now choose to export your data and say I'm finished, and you can just use you as yourself as a business user and say I always get this type of file and I need to apply these steps in order to make it a data quality rich file. And then export it, but you can also use that in any integration. I will show you that afterwards. So that is a big advantage here, so that you can really involve the business in your data pipeline, because this preparation versioned, by the way, you can reference this data preparation that has been built by a business user in your IT maintained data pipeline. Yeah. Okay. I show you a little more enhanced data preparation, because I just did these two steps. If you look at such an example, you can see that you can have multiple steps in your data preparation, and you see as well that depending on the type of your column, you see different ways how the data is represented here and how you can filter. For example, now you could just click on, I want to see just Texas rows, and if you would click on the city type, it will show you a list of the elements, the data elements, and the account of the occurrence in the data set. So you could filter on that in addition, and then continue working on it. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show about data preparation. I'm going to show you data stewardship in addition, and then show you how you would integrate that in a data pipeline. So you can simply switch between the tools here in a drop-down box in the web. Data stewardship is a web-based tool for data quality operations. It's normally built, it's part of a data process. So normally you have some steps that go ahead. Then you have your data stewardship process step or steps normally, and then you continue with your work. So for example, you might have a use case where you have data coming from different sources like Salesforce and some other customer, some other tool that is speaking about customers, and you want to align the customer information between these two tools. So you might have a data pipeline beforehand that tries to match the data and tries to identify groups of data that could be duplicates. And for those that are not clear, where you need to decide which is the golden record, you present that via data stewardship to the business users. And this is the example that I want to show you. One of the examples, there are 4 types of data enhancements, let's say, or data quality things that you can achieve with this tool. One is a merging, or let's say deduplication. One is, and then I'm going to show you this as well, an enhancement of data where you add additional information. One is just correction of data, and one is a grouping of data. So back to the use case that I described, you might have the need to find a golden record between different systems, and you have built your pipeline which matched groups of data together and say these are potential duplicates, and you present that to your data stewards, and you can assign that. You can assign that directly in the pipeline, or by some dispatching here in the tool where you say, I have unassigned records, and you choose your data steward who has to work on these tasks. So these are the tasks that are assigned to me, but you could also look at unassigned tasks or take over tasks from someone else. I'm just going to show you the first example here, which is the group of data for Arnold. And this data comes out of two systems, Salesforce and Marketo. And you see, for example, for the age, you see on top the golden record like proposed by the system. And the system said, okay, I take the 24 from Salesforce because I trust more in Salesforce with 90% than in Marketo. But you could change that. You could say, I take the value, which doesn't really make sense here because it's empty from Marketo, so I change it back to the Salesforce value. But the business user decides which, I mean, the rest is in sync here, but you as a business user decide which elements you define as a golden record and then merge these records. And then the data pipeline continues to use this business information and to load it into a new system or present it in the data warehouse or whatever your pipeline is. Yeah. So, and then you would finish your task here and continue with the next. And you also have as a campaign owner, one of these task setup is called a campaign here, and you see as a responsible how far the process is and how well your data stewards worked and how far they are in their task resolution. For arbitration, this is the second and last example that I show from data stewardship. This is more about enhancing the data. So in this case, this is really a simple one, but it shows the basic principle. This is enhancing your set of data. Again, the same customers. You see Arnold again here, but this time you give an answer to a question. The answer is that the question is this person a good beta tester? And you, as a business user, say, okay, I take maybe these three people and say these are good beta testers, for example. So this is a real simple example of enhancing your data. Here you just enhance it with yes or no, but you could also have, again, a semantic type. You could have various potential outcomes of your question and assign that to your data. If ever you need a business assessment of what category, for example, you should assign to your data, if you can't do that automatically. Okay, last but not least, you would combine this in a so-called pipeline or in a data flow where you can elaborate or design your steps that you want to apply to your data. So you normally start with a data source and then you apply various process steps. And in these process steps, you could integrate, as I said earlier, you could integrate your data preparations, or you could put your data as an input to the data stewardship and then grab the output again from data stewardship, so the resolved task from the data stewards, and process that further in your data pipeline. You have here on like in almost all the data integration tools, what you would accept. You have different processes and you can define all the attributes of your processes, and you can add additional steps here. I'm just going to quickly present you what you have. I mean, these are all the elements that you would expect from a data integration tool. Yeah. Okay. So this is what I know. One more thing that I wanted to show here. the run button. You can run your data pipeline and you can choose on which engine you want to run that. And this is important, one, for scalability, as I said earlier, but also in terms of you can distinguish here and say, I want to have my run engine, for example, on premise. You could have all your design work, for example, in cloud, but run on premise if you don't want, for example, to leave your data, your on-premise world. If you have sensible data, which you can mask, by the way, also for the data stewards, if you have sensible data and you don't want to leave that your on-premise walls, then you can still use the cloud designer, but run that in an on-premise engine, a runtime engine. And this could be scaled however you want to scale. And this is the only thing that needs to be scaled. All the design time does not need scale, but the runtime then for your data integration needs scale, and this can be easily scaled here. As Jörg said earlier, you can always ask questions during the presentation. I personally prefer that than having them all at the end. So if there are questions, please use the question and answer tool, and Jörg will read them and present them to me so that I can directly answer them. Okay. So this was my demo regarding talent. I move on to the database layer. So Exasol first, what is it? Exasol is an in-memory database which is based on a shared nothing cluster. So it's massive parallel processing architecture with a column store approach, and it supports multiple platforms, and it also supports, and I will come to that afterwards, it supports integration of other databases, other data sources within with a data virtualization capability, which is, I think, an outstanding value add of this solution. And as I said earlier already, it really helps integrating advanced analytics like Python or R scripts and to bring them into your SQL world so that you have advanced analytics, but still being accessible by all the tools that you might want to use to access your data. And it is enterprise ready in terms of everything that you need. So security, for example, but also self-tuning, so to lower your total cost of ownership. Okay, so what are the benefits from our perspective? I mean, I'm referring to the picture that I had earlier. Exasol is in the middle, an integration layer where you would load some of the data you would load from Talent. And one of the advantages is speed. Exasol is the fastest database in the world. I will show you afterwards. I'm not comparing to all of the others in the demo, but I show you the speed of the database. But I will do that in the presentation of the BI layer, because there you can see the speed. And I'm going to show you a little example of how you can leverage your advanced analytics world and provide that to the business users. And this is one of the main advantages, I think, or we think from this solution, together with the integration possibilities, which is not only that you can load data at high speed and consume data at high speed from Exasol, but you can also have, which is called virtual schemas, where you can say, integrate this Oracle database or this Hadoop file store and make it available in my Exasol schema, and then people can access that seamlessly and join it to the rest of the data that you have there. So which allows you to really build your business layer in Exasol, and this is what we would recommend, so that you have your single version of truth here, regardless of your consumer. Yeah. And not only by having a self-managed database, you can lower TCOs, but also by omitting some of the legacy elements that we've seen before. Okay, regarding the demo, a database is a little bit harder to demonstrate without any BI tool than the rest. This is, I'm using dbeaver to access the database, but you can use several client tools to do so. I'm just connecting to a demo database, which is provided by Exasol with many schemas, like, for example, New York taxi trips that you could report on, or the demo that we will see afterwards is about prescriptions in the UK. Yeah, you can browse here through the data like through all the other databases. It behaves like a relational. It is a relational database, and for example, you could this already shows speed. You can, for example, select the amount of data in the New York taxi trips database, which is immense, and this is counted on real time just now. There's no cache there in between. Regarding the advanced analytics, I mean, this is really a simple example, but I think that the simple example shows the power of this anyways. So what I'm doing here by executing this statement is that I create an R script in this case. You could also do Python or Lua or Java or any other scripting language that you want, because you then need to provide a container that can execute this script, and this container is also then distributed across the cluster. So it benefits of the massive parallel processing capabilities. In this case here, I'm just showing a hello world, but the thing is that you can create your analytical function, and this could be machine learning at its deepest level using TensorFlow or whatever, and you can let that run in a distributed way on your cluster, and then provide that to the business users just by a simple select. Which I'm going to execute right now. And I mean, here the result is relatively annoying, but it still shows that this interaction, and this is a real big benefit in order to, as I said, to integrate your advanced analytics in the business layer. Okay. So I'm moving to the next here, Power BI. We are now attacking the front end part. Power BI, most of you potentially know it, is a tool by Microsoft. It actually consists out of several tools. The most known, but there are more than these three, is Power BI Desktop, which is kind of the design tool for reports. You have the Power BI Service, which is the web-based representation of these reports, and where you can also build dashboards. And you have Power BI Mobile, where you can access it from your mobiles. Why do we think that Power BI is well suited for your stack, or should at least be considered? It is because Power BI offers self-service to the report users. It has big visualization capabilities, and with the BI service, you can have it cloud-based and web-based with an easy access model. So that's fine. We would recommend, and I will show that in the presentation, we would recommend to really separate, and Power BI offers this. It's a little bit hidden, but our recommendation is to really separate and we call that presentation layer, so which is the data model that you present, that you give to your users from the actual reports. And you can do that and manage the data set separately from the reports, which allows really a reuse of this presentation layer. I'm going to show you what I mean by this, and I'm going to start with the dashboard, and then move down to the data model. So this is a sample dashboard just with 3 tiles, and the first here shows the actual Bitcoin rate in US dollar, and you might have seen directly that it changed. This is really a real-time tile, which is push-based. So whenever there is a change in the price of Bitcoins, it will show up here. This could be enhanced with alerting here as well. And meanwhile I talk, you might observe this and see if it changes again. But this is one of the functionalities that is an advantage in this tooling. Could be achieved by Superset as well, as I will show afterwards, but here as well. And below...
May I interrupt you? There's one question regarding Power BI. If Power BI is GDPR compliant?
Well, it depends on what you do and where you choose your services to be on the one hand, and this really depends on the implementation. You can make it GDPR compliant, yes.
Yeah, I think it can only run locally on premise. You can have the services also on prem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. These are tiles that come from a report that are built on the Exasol example that I showed earlier, the UK prescriptions, and I'm going to drill down by clicking on it. I'm going to drill down into what Microsoft calls a report, which others would potentially call a dashboard already. So this is a report that was created with Power BI Desktop, which shows the 15 most commonly prescribed medications and other elements to that. I'm not going to go into the details regarding the time, but will show you that if this has interactivity built into it, which is easily done in Power BI. If I click on one of the medications, then the rest of the charts adapt, and this is real-time queried against the database. So there's no cache in between, there's no aggregation in between. This is queried against approximately 1 billion records in this area. So you can switch between these different medicines and see the changes here. I'm quickly going to show you, but I'm going to abbreviate that a little bit, quickly show you this is the data model, and as I said, separated, so the report is not in here. This is just the data model, which is relatively simple here, and I would really just use that as a presentation layer. So kind of like just for example renaming the columns to something meaningful for the business. But the rest of the business elements that you would do, I would do that really on the database level. Here, what I like about it is when you now publish this to the web, to what we've just seen, then it will tell you that you have dependent reports on this, and that you might want to check those. Doesn't want to now, so I'm not going to show it, but it shows you a little impact analysis on which reports depend on this data model. Okay, good. So last demonstration is about Superset. Quickly, what is it? It is an open source alternative for not really reporting. It's not pixel perfect reporting. It's more in the visual analytics area. It was originally created by Airbnb because they weren't happy with what Tableau did. So this is why it looks a little bit like Tableau in the web. It is now an Apache incubator project, so it's well backupped by the Apache Foundation. It's ideal for, I would rather say, expert people, rather expert than sporadic users, and it's ideal for time series representation of charts. I will give you a quick demonstration of it. I'm logged on here to a superset demo, and I'm going to show you the same chart as before here. So I'm rebuild the same chart as in Power BI here in superset, and again this queries directly against Exasol, the 1 billion records in the database, and here I mean the functionalities are not as enhanced as in Power BI. I mean that's clear, but you can achieve the same a little bit different here by for example, selecting one of the substances here and have all the charts adapted to that. You can also drill down in such a chart and look into the details, and you see here that the filter that I applied in the dashboard has been taken over so that I'm still in the same context, and now I could, for example, have a closer look, zoom into my chart and have a closer look at for example, how that was between April 16 and 17, or enhance here my time frame. You can also export your data here, or you can embed it into your website if you want to. So that's a really simple alternative, or an easy alternative in order to embed, for example, into a customer portal. You have a lot of visualizations available in the tool. As I said earlier, many of them are time series optimized, but there are also map-like things that I'm going to show you afterwards, and I'm going to show you directly. So I prepared one example here, which shows more map-based reporting here. The UK taxi trips, the New York taxi trips, sorry, where you can zoom into and also choose the layers like in Google. And last here for the functionalities, this is also a real-time ticker on the Bitcoin data. Again, here it's done a little bit different than in Power BI. In Power BI, as I said, it was a push mechanism where you directly had the data whenever it changed. Here you say you specify an interval in which the data refreshes. Advantages that you have still the development of the price, and it refreshes every 10 seconds to the latest value, so that you have both here. Yeah. Big advantage, this is free and you can run it anywhere. Okay, so I'm coming to the end here so that we have some time for additional questions. What are the common benefits? Why do we think that this stack is well suited for data-driven companies and startups? One is it can grow as you grow. So you can start from a community edition, which is not true for Power BI. This is why we had in addition superset, but you can start with community edition, so 0 license, and you can scale that up to an enterprise support, still with reasonable license cost. In addition, why this is really to be considered is that you can choose how you run it. You can run that all in cloud, all on premise, or a hybrid setup in between, whatever suits your needs. And it scales. I explained that for talent already. I have kind of mentioned that for Exasol, but as I said, it's a cluster. You can add just nodes to your cluster and scale up the database with commodity hardware. That's an easy thing to do. Power BI is the Power BI services in the cloud anyways, and Superset does not really need to scale because it just pushes down the query to your database. So there's no need to, but you can load balance it in any Kubernetes cluster, for example. And one thing that I like about the stack, you can think different about it, but I like that you have predictable costs. I mean, cloud costs are fine, but if you have a consumption-based model, I wouldn't recommend that for a data-driven company. If you have to pay for every query, then you kind of have your costs in mind when you do your analysis, and that's no good. So I would rather go for a solution where you know what your costs are, regardless of how many queries and how many analyses you do. Okay, the before last slide, what do we think should be could be your takeaways from this session, and what could be your next actions? You can check the trust score of your data. There is a public available possibility to just check your data. You load up your data and get a trust score by talent. So you can use this URL to register there and check your data. Could be whatever structured file you have. You could start with testing the community editions of the tools, as I said, except Power BI. But Power BI starts at $10 a month. So that's not really a big cost that you have to invest here. If you already have an Office 365 account, then you can already start using it. And you could start evaluating your best stack starting from here. And as we recommended, consider the elements that we presented today. And you could also convince us to invest in your solution. I mean, this is regarding startups. We have, you could call that a startup support. We have since some years, we have a concept. It's more a financial concept, but I mean, it's a collaboration concept if you want to. We offer something that we call a solution as a service, where we say, okay, if you have a solution in mind which drives your business, then we are ready. If you convince us of your business, we are ready to invest not in your company, but in your solution, so that you don't have to pay capital expenses on it, but only operating because you just rent the solution from us. Yeah. So, which always makes sense if the costs are below the business value. I mean, you are the expert in what business value you generate. We are the experts in how we design a solution that is efficient and low in cost for you. Okay, so this has been my last slide. So I would be happy to answer any additional questions that might have come up during the session. I can't hear you, Jörg.
Yes, there are some. I'm just grouping them so that we are not jumping in there, just coming in some. One is, what is the smallest cluster I can start with XSL?
Well, the community edition, well, one node is the smallest cluster. Community edition or the XR1, yeah. Yeah.
Then there's another one. Do you have project experience with the stack presented?
Yes, multiple project experience. We have some projects really with this stack. One also for a startup, which is relatively data-driven. And we have several projects where elements out of the stack played a role. Not always the same stack. As I said earlier, it's not the ideal stack for everyone. You might have different requirements, and I name that we follow the customer, so we really engage with the customer to find the optimal solution for them, which is not always these three elements, but could differ from them.
Another one is, where can I find the community editions from the different companies? Are they like provided by us or by the vendors?
They are provided by the vendors, but we can distribute links when we distribute the video afterwards, I would recommend.
Yeah, there's another one regarding talent, because there are open source or like community editions and commercial ones, and if there is an overview, which components are additionally in the commercial edition?
There potentially is. I would also do that as a follow-up. Basically, you could say that the tools that I showed here, data stewardship and data preparation, are not part of the community edition, but the Talent Open Studio, which is an integration, a really powerful integration tool, is available as open source. But again, I'd say that we provide a link to an overview between the commercial and the community edition as a follow-up.
Yeah, and there's a last one regarding how much effort is it to start completely in the cloud with the stack presented?
Well, depends a little bit what you all want to include. If you just want to set up the environment, I mean, that's pretty easy. That's a question of days, if not to say a day. But of course, for loading data or make your data available, that depends on your project. But just setting up the stack is fairly simple.
Just looking, seems to be that there are no other questions at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So then I thank you for attending and for listening and for the questions. And as Jörg said earlier, we will make this presentation available to you, and with the additional information that we just discussed from the questions. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Thank you, Boris. And we now close the session. Thank you very much for attending.